Okay, the best till last. What's the most important similarity between Death of a Salesman and Keats' poetry, in my view? Dreams and visions. The way that both writers embed at the centre of their vision the idea of alternative realities, other mentally constructed realities. And so if you start, let's start with Willie, Death of a Salesman. We know that he has this alternative reality, which is basically memory, which he goes into, but that might be distorted by his unrealism. Certainly, once he starts to talk to Ben at the end of the play, he's creating out of nowhere this imagined world, which is completely personal to him. So you've got running in parallel the real world and then Willie's mental world. If you wanted ever to talk about that in an essay, a great point to make would be Miller's original title for this play, Inside His Head, which is what it was called. So it's Miller's way of opening up this subjective internal mental experience. And I think Keats does something very similar in his poems, the way that you've got this idea of two different realities. And if you stop this video for a second, see if you can name one or two of those alternative realities from Keats. Where do you get dreams? Where do you get visions? Where do you get an alternative reality? Well, I think we could easily find them in Eva St Agnes, for instance. We could find them in Madeline's dream of Porphyro, and she has this strange vision, and what happens there is mysterious, and it's important, and it's profound, and it's at the centre of the poem in ways in which why and what it exactly means it isn't clear. But something happens to her which is very emotional. It's something to do with reality. It's something to do with sex, I think. But she is transported to a different experience of the world, and specifically a different experience of Porphyro. Yeah, and I think there is a hint here that, in broad terms, that love is a kind of a dream or a madness that can seize us and can make us see reality in a different way. You see that, I think, in Lamia, where she casts a spell more or less explicitly over Lysias. You see the same pattern in La Belle Dame sans Merci, where we get this idea of the femme fatale hypnotizing a male. So love becomes this kind of dream reality. You get more specific examples of it in Lamia, where Lamia and Lysias are dozing together in the purple lined palace of sweet sin, and their eyes are half open, half closed. They're on that verge of sleeping and waking, which is a very seductive space. It's halfway between reality and sleep, halfway between reality and dream, and it's a lovely place to be. And Keats is interested in this place where the difference between reality and unreality starts to break down, I think. On a more profound level, you get this idea that it's possible that in La Belle Dame sans Merci, for instance, the whole thing was some kind of fantasy. In the cold, hard world of reality, fairy princesses don't wander around seducing men. In the beginning parts of the 19th century, people didn't believe in fairies anymore. And we have to remember the whole thing is a story told by the knight in a distraught mental state to this random stranger. So from that point of view, there may be reasons there to doubt that it's completely trustworthy. Modern critics have been interested in this. There was a lecturer who came this year to the college, the sixth form college, and saw the whole poem as a presentation of post-traumatic stress disorder. He recognised that the Napoleonic Wars were ongoing when La Belle Dame was written, and that soldiers were coming back from the front, they were coming back from France, and basically they were emotionally and mentally shot. They were a mess. They were in trauma. And he saw this poem about as a kind of a response to trauma, military trauma. I found that a bit of a stretch. It's not a reading that particularly appealed to me, but what I did admire about it was the way that he'd noticed and paid attention to... Ooh, dropping my phone there, sorry. Noticed and paid attention to the ambiguity of reality in that poem. Poetry itself is a transfiguring of reality and a way of taking us into a dream world or a dream space. And as a romantic poet, Keats is intensely interested in that. So it shouldn't surprise us that his poems come back to that again and again. So where does it happen in Isabella? You have a think for a second. Where does it happen in Isabella? Surely the revisiting of the spirit of Lorenzo. Surely that seems like this ambiguous experience, which is possibly real, possibly imagined. It's given credibility in reality by the fact that his body was there. But this idea of spirit figures, which might be real, might not be, and the ambiguity of those figures, is an idea which goes right back to Hamlet. And Hamlet's father's ghost walking in the Act 1 of Hamlet. And it's key in the play Hamlet that nobody knows exactly what that ghost is. Is it real? Is it a demon? Is it actually his father? Once we're into these strange, non-real, places that take us away from reality, everything's up for question. So the way that alternative realities, dream worlds, are at the heart of both Miller and Keats's methods as writers, I think for me, I would be surprised if there's any question where you couldn't make something of that, because those alternative realities, they connect to everything, to the structure of the story, to tragedy, to love, to the relationships of characters. It makes everything ambiguous. It makes everything double. It makes everything interesting and complicated. So it's just a nice way that you can find a clear and important and significant link between Keats and Miller. And that's where I will leave it. Thank you for your attention. What would I like in terms of response to this is preferably for the first video where we're looking at overall our general discussion of the two texts. If you can make a comment about what do you think is let's put it as this: what's the most important difference between Miller and Keats? I was going to say what's the most important similarity, but I would expect you to be led by me and say the dream thing. But a less obvious question is, what do you think is the most important difference between Keats's writing and Miller's writing? See if you can come up with something interesting and put that into the comments. You could put it down here, but in the first video on the comparison between Keats and Miller would be the best place to put it. So yeah, write me a line. I'd be interested to see who comes up with something interesting. Cheers guys, out for now.